Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on how to use alcohol markers. In this video we're going to be coloring in MewTwo. We're going to do this exact drawing. In fact, I've just finished it, so what we're going to do is go ahead and rewind and we'll play from the very beginning. It is a long video. I realize it probably took me around an hour, maybe more, so feel free to jump ahead to different sections. I'm going to start with the background, then we'll do the tail, and then we'll do the skin. Hope you enjoy. Thank you so much. In this episode, we're going to be doing a very basic shading tutorial on Mewtwo from Pokemon. What I've done so far is I have selected my palette. Now, I've created these little fades just to give you an idea of what it might kind of look like. But this isn't homework. This isn't being graded. This is just a tool that I made to help myself. So I know it's not the prettiest thing ever, but you know what, it's just giving me an idea of what it's going to look like. So I'm going to try to have like a glowing feature around Mewtwo in the background. I started off with this gray right here, but it's hard to go light colors and markers. This is pretty much the lightest marker that I have, and it's even just a little bit too dark. So I might actually we always start with the lightest colors and work our way towards the darker colors. I might start with the second one, which is a very light pink, kind of glow it around him. And then there's going to be a thick glow with RV180, and it's going to get light, and it's going to go dark again. So let's work on this. Let's start with my lightest color. And actually what I'm going to do is, I haven't practiced this before. I don't have some reference off screen that I've already worked on before, so we're just going to kind of make this up. But I want to know where this glowing edge is going to be, and it's going to kind of go around him a little bit. So I can always mark it up light with the lightest marker because I know I'm going to end up going over this later. So I'm actually just going to do kind of like a line to start, and this will give me an idea of where that first glow is going to end up being. It's just giving me an idea. Okay, this is good so far. That's a little too close. So it follows him around a little bit. This isn't set in stone. This is, like, you're not going to see this when it's all said and done. This line will be completely gone. I am simply just making a tool to help guide me. Okay, so I think that's pretty good for the first layer. And then I'm actually going to do something similar. So that represents this layer right here. I want to know what this darker edge is going to look like. So I'm going to grab this color right here. This is RV192. These are Hoo alcohol markers. And I'm going to do something similar. So I just kind of want to know where this outer edge is going to be. And it's basically just going to kind of follow this around. And something like this. You won't see much of it. Now you can see this ink right here is quite light. It actually lightens up as it dries. So you just want to be mindful. Like, I've let this sit out and dry for a little while now. And when you color down, it ends up being the wet ink is darker than the light ink. Okay, so this is pretty good for what this might look like. I'm going to do an outer edge, that same color right here, because this is what this color is going to end up being right around here. So I'm going to come back over it later. So now I know for sure where I'm working. Guys, I know these videos are kind of long, but the truth is the coloring process is kind of long. And this isn't going to happen overnight. I know I could cut up these videos, make them a little bit shorter, but, you know, it might kind of take away... Oh, shoot. You know, if I do that, I might cut out some details. I might give you... If I cut it short, it might give you this false sense of like, wow, coloring is very quick and it's easy. So, I don't know. Alright, I'm basically just going to work my way in here. It starts darker where you put the marker down, so I'm going to kind of start... I want it to be going darker as I get out. So since it starts darker, I'm going to start from the outside and work my way in a little bit. And just kind of do these light strokes. This is going to end up being really light. I'm not going to get up to the tail because I basically want it to be, or up to the skin because I want it to be pretty much white. We can come back later and we can always add more color. You can always go darker, but you can't really go lighter, especially once the ink dries. You can go a little bit lighter. If the ink is still wet and you're working with wet ink, you can kind of go a little bit lighter. But yeah, once it's dry, it's not going to change very much, unless you want to go like significantly darker with it. So I'm getting this area wet, and then I'm kind of just dragging little bits back towards the body. Okay, you make it a little bit darker. The further I get from the skin and from the tail, the darker it's going to get. I usually don't like to use the white of the paper to show white. Like if I'm doing a cloud, I'll still use this color gray right here probably. And once everything else is colored in, it will appear more white. But yeah, with markers, it's tough. It's tough to get something that's like really light. Okay, so working this. Now, wet ink is really important. I mentioned it briefly before, but I'm going to talk about it a lot because it's just so important to mixing and blending everything. When I mixed all these markers, the ink was wet. I started with the lightest color, and the lightest color is going to help me kind of like establish where everything is. Like I said, you're probably going to end up going over 99% of the spots that you went over with the light marker, and it's going to end up being darker. So in very few cases am I actually going to see this final color. Maybe a little bit towards the edge, but that's because I'm trying to keep it really light. But you notice, let's say for example in this tail spectrum right here, when I went from lightest to darkest, the lightest color I see is usually a little bit closer to the second one. Like, this is a spectrum. The lightest color I will ever see will be my lightest color, and it won't even get that light because it'll get mixed in a little bit. And then the same thing with the darkest. This is the absolute maximum I will see, but since I'm mixing it in with the lighter colors below it, it will never get quite that dark. So this is min, max, but you're never going to quite reach that min or max. It's like a greater than sign and a less than sign compared to a greater than or equal to sign. Okay, working my ink really light, really light around the skin. I think I'm going to probably end up sticking with this and skipping over that gray that I've chosen earlier. I don't think that's going to help me very much for what I want. And I know this takes a while. I'm going to try to do this all in one go. So I have all my markers chosen out. Now, when I pick my markers, I like to pick my markers ahead of time. And there's a couple reasons why. First off, if you're like me and you have the Ohuhu 320 piece set, I've got two different 320 piece sets. So I've got over 600 unique markers to choose from. It can actually take a while to find the right marker that you're looking for. And if you're looking for the right marker in the middle of a piece, well, guess what? That takes time. And what happens with time? The ink dries on you. So I like to have my markers picked out well ahead of time so I can just jump from one marker to the next. While I'm working here, like the rest of the ink is continuously drying while I'm working on this. But as I'm doing that, I basically always want to be applying ink somewhere. It's a bit of a fight against time. You have plenty of time. It's not a massive foot race or anything like that. But you don't want to get up and go to the bathroom, go up and get like a coffee or something like that. You want to keep working with that wet ink, and I just want to keep applying. And I'll come back and I'll revisit spots that I've been to before. Because as this ink is dried, you can kind of see that this ink is dry compared to this. This is fresh and this is darker, and this is a little bit lighter. And I'm actually really digging this. So I start light, and then I can kind of work my way up, and I can always come back and add more. So we can always go darker. We can't really go lighter. Yeah, I'm liking this so far. So I'm about to work in the second color here, the RV130. And I really want to apply, whenever I add a darker ink, I want it to be onto a lighter ink, a wet ink that's lighter than it. And I'm going to end up blending it back in to itself with that with that lighter marker. So your lighter marker, the one I'm using right now, it ends up becoming kind of a blending tool a little bit. Get some more wet ink down. And I'm going to be a little bit conservative here. I'm adding more of the light ink so that when I add that darker ink, it doesn't quite dominate quite so much. Because I'm not entirely certain what this is going to look like. Alright, let's just do a spot right here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then I'm just immediately going to come in with my lighter color and try to blend this out. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Okay, let's come here. Fortunately, I put that line in already. That's going to kind of help me. And then I don't like to do like a line like this. I like to kind of squiggle a little bit, varying the amount of pressure that I'm putting down. And I'm going to come in right away and start to blend this. I'm not going to do the entire outline in this darker pink, because by the time I do and I come back to the original spot, it'll be dried up and it'll be a little bit too late to blend. These things get dark on you fast, like real fast. So I'd be interested to kind of fast forward in this video and then rewind and kind of see how everything looks. Especially as it dries up, it gets a little bit lighter, like I said. But it'd be interesting to see the progression just by fast forwarding and rewinding in the video. Put a touch right here. I know this takes a little while, guys, but you gotta put your time in. But you know what? It's fun. It's about the journey. It's relaxing. It's therapeutic. It's a little bit of everything. So when in doubt, just put down more light ink and just keep yourself that working surface, because the ink will dry a little bit as over time. And I generally like to work with fresher ink. Sometimes you want to let it dry out a little bit, but basically the more I let it dry out, the more of a line I'm going to get between different colors. So if I really want to fade this thing in, which I do, then I want to work with wet ink, because I'm basically just mixing the inks together on the paper itself. As far as the thickness of the paper goes, I'm not entirely certain what this is. Printer paper. This is like, I think 50 to 60 pound printer paper. You don't want to use regular 20 pound paper, and the reason why is because it doesn't hold as much ink as a thicker sheet, so it doesn't allow you to kind of like add a ton of ink and mix it there on the paper. Also, since the paper is a little bit thinner, it tends to dry out a little bit quicker, so it's a little bit harder to blend things together. Now if you're doing like a simple drawing, like a simple two-tone drawing, yeah, regular printer paper is totally fine. But I find with a slightly thicker paper, it gives me just more time to work with, and it's just more friendly for its coloring. Again, this area wet again. When in doubt, just come back and get it wet. Always just getting darker. So, and I'm revisiting some of these spots that, you know, I left a little bit blank, because I wanted to let that ink dry just to get a good idea of what it's going to kind of look like. So I'm not like mastering this one section right here. I'm not just doing all this section, getting it right, and then come back over here. I'm kind of doing it all together. And the reason why is for consistency. I'm doing a lot. There's a lot of steps here. There's a lot of switching between markers, and every time I do that, I'm changing the color ever so slightly. Now, if I do most of the steps here, and then I come over here and try to repeat those steps, I mean, chances are I'm going to forget something. Maybe I'll put down too much ink here, there, too little ink there. I just want to keep it all consistent. So if I made a mistake right now, like right here, like let's say I put in a marker that was like a little too dark and I was unhappy with it, what would I do? Well, yeah, of course I'm going to try to save it by applying a lighter ink, But if I can't really save that mistake, I'm going to stay consistent with that mistake and carry it through all the way around. So I'm going to make it darker all the way around and then try to work with it there and try to see if I can save it there. Wet ink is your friend. These light markers, you run out of them real quick because you end up, at least I do, because I use them as blenders a lot. Maybe a little bit closer here. Yeah, I think I'm going to skip this gray completely. I think this actually looks pretty nice. That looks real nice, actually. It looks a little liney right here, so I'm going to try to kind of fade this in a little bit. So the ink is still pretty wet, still pretty fresh. And to fade it, like I said, I don't do a line. I do that squiggly, and then I kind of come in and just blur everything together, like so. And I'm just going back and forth, not focusing on one spotty area. Just kind of keep applying back and forth, mixing that ink on the paper. That looks pretty good. I'm actually very happy with that. Alright, so let's go to, so I've marked my numbers here. So from now on, I'm going to refer to these as, I'm going to cross this out. This will be just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I wasn't really sure how I want to end it, so I'll just do 8 and 9. So I might, when I'm explaining this, I might say, oh, I'm going to go from the 5th marker to the 4th marker or something like that. Alright, so we just applied the second one. Let's do the third one now. And that is RV180. Hoo brand markers. Alright, so this ink should be fairly wet still. Alright, this is going to be a lighter color. Actually, I'm going to skip. I want to do lighter colors first. Since 3 is darker than 4, I'm actually going to jump ahead to 4 and come on the other side of this glow. And like I said, always want to work with lighter colors. I'm just applying ink and I'm keeping that paper wet, and that is going to help me blend a little bit later. So you can see I've actually got that line right there, and I actually want that line. That line is a reference guide for me right now as I'm about to apply this darker color. So everything outward from this line is going to be this. This is going to be the new base color, RV192. So my focus right now is going to be applying that third marker, which is a little bit darker. Now this marker is a little bit different from the other two. You can see this one's more oval shaped, this one's rounder. This marker does not have a brush tip. This is a chisel tip. And the chisel tips aren't as great for applying ink. You see I have to kind of push a little bit harder and come back a little bit more. The chisel tips are meant more for like pushing ink, so it's a little bit better for correcting mistakes and like moving ink around. You can literally, like, if I put a darker ink in a spot that I don't like it, you can actually kind of push that darker ink aside a little bit with the lighter marker. So the brush tip is more for pulling ink. I think that's good. Brush tip is more for pulling ink. And I'm going to use the brush right now, and we're going to go over that same spot we just did. So it always gets a little scary when you add a dark color because it's hard to fix. It's hard to change. Okay, so we'll work the bottom first. This ink is wet, but I don't want to stick around too long. Alright, so I put down 3. I'm going to come back to 2 and try to blend this in a little bit. Oops, I went over the line a little bit, but that's okay. Come back to 2 and line it up, bring it back in. Really like my wet ink. Now when you're blending markers, the difference between the color is important. So if I have two colors that are pretty similar together, so for example this gray and this gray, I can just put down like one layer or two and blend them together pretty well. But if I were gonna go from from this pink to this pink, this is it's a bigger change. So I generally want the paper to have a little bit more ink on it, and that way I can kind of blend it together a little bit better with that extra ink. So I'm coming in with marker number 1, and I'm just trying to blend a little bit more. Applying more ink, and just trying to keep everything wet. Come back in with marker number 2. Blend it back in. Keep everything wet. It's okay if I go over a little bit. And let's come back in. I want like maybe a little bit more of a line, not a line, but to be slightly more solid and like well defined. Yeah, this is more solid and well defined than like over here. So I'm gonna come in. I'm doing the more so the outer edge, so it's a little bit of a thinner line. I should stop saying line because line implies straight. Oh yeah, that looks real nice. All right, let's come back up here. I'm gonna get it wet one more time with marker number 2. Okay, I always like wet ink. Maybe even come back with the first one and blend this a little bit more again. Always blending. I'm always doing something. I'm always trying to get the colors to come together. I basically just always want to be, I don't want to say work as fast as possible, but I always want to be working on something. Very few times that I want to sit around and wait for the ink to dry, because usually 9 out of 10 times you want the ink to be slightly wet. Alright, so let's come in here. We'll do our first pass through. That's pretty good. First pass, come back to the second marker and try to blend this in. In fact, I might even go over the back edge a little bit. I'm really pushing. The tip of this marker is really taking a beating. That kind of just happens when you blend these things together a bunch over time. Usually the tips of these markers don't last quite as long as the ink inside of them. So by the time you're almost done with the marker, those tips can be pretty beat up. Sometimes I use the chisel end just to preserve the brush tip. Like this is the chisel end, but it just doesn't blend quite as well. I mean, it does, but I have to push a little bit harder, so it's more damage to the paper. But it applies less ink. So actually, this might be a good thing for right here, because I don't want to put down a ton of ink coming close to MewTwo. I wanted to keep it light. So maybe the brush tip is actually a good thing. All right, let's come back in with that darker color, and let's define kind of the back edge of it a little bit more. That looks pretty good. That looks real good. Okay, I'm gonna say that's good for kind of like the inner section. Now let's do these corner sections. So I'm gonna use my new base color, which is going to be number 4. In this case, it might actually be better to let it dry. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of start applying ink. You see, this is not a chisel tip. This is a chisel tip, not a brush tip. And you can see it's harder for me to apply the ink. Like, it's just not coming out the way I want it to. And I'm going to have to work it a little bit more. I might even have to change colors a little bit. So go over that edge. Yeah, this is not applying a lot of ink. And the marker might be low on ink. I mean, I do color a fair bit. But I'm going to use what I can of it. The problem is, it's taking me longer to apply the ink, and we're working with a large surface area here. But I'm going to at least try to get some of this ink down. As much as I can. I really don't know what this is going to look like when it's all said and done. I mean, it might look really good right now, and then you fast forward 5 minutes ahead in this video, and it just looks like garbage. We will see. Not every video I make, not every picture I do is a winner. But I really like to plan them out. Really like to think my colors ahead of time. I just want to know what's going to go on the paper. Alright, let's come to RB160, which is marker number 5. And let's start to apply the ink here, like so. So these far corners over here, they're going to end up being a lot darker. So I have the option of adding ink there. I don't have to, but I'd like to. I think it helps kind of bring the picture all together. And then I'm also just getting the ink kind of, the paper wet up there. I know it might dry between the time I start using that dark marker up in that corner, but I just like to get the paper kind of wet. Alright, let's come back in with that number 4. Try to blend this together. And actually what I'm not liking right now is that I kind of wanted more of an edge for this outer first thick line. I kind of want it to be a little bit sharper on the back edge. So I think what I'm going to do is let the ink dry, maybe let it dry a little bit, and then I'm going to come back in with marker number 3 and just do like kind of a thin edge around the back side of it. Okay, but the reason why I'm losing that sharp edge is because I'm using this chisel tip, this next marker, and I am kind of going over it a little bit. I'm trying to blend in these next layers. That's pretty good. Let's come back in with number 5. So just going to apply more, and we're just going to blend, keep doing that same blending. We're basically just doing another pass. Because this part I want to be blended. I don't want it to be sharp. At least I don't think. It's a little bit of a race against the clock when it's drying, but I work pretty quickly. Coming back here. Make this solid. Many passes. It's never a one and done in color with alcohol markers. It's always apply a little ink, come back, let it dry a little bit, apply a little ink, let it dry a little bit, come back. Always revisiting. It's going to slowly shape together. Just kind of blending this all. Oh, this marker. This might be the last drawing for this marker. Fortunately, I do have a lot of backups. I don't know if I have this specific color. Okay, that looks pretty cool. I'm going to come back and do this outer edge one more time, because I've lost it in some spots. It's inconsistent. But this time I'm just going to do it fairly thin, but a little bit darker on the kind of like back edge of it, the outer edge of it. I think this will define it a little bit better. I sometimes like to turn paper sideways. And I'm not doing a line, I'm doing like little squigglies. It's just things just look more natural when they're in squiggly form. Okay, it's coming along. Oh yeah, that looks really good. Now my paper's starting to warp a little bit because the ink, that's another reason why I want to kind of keep applying ink across the entire thing. But as you do apply more and more ink, it starts to warp a little bit. So I'm going to go back to number 5, the same marker we've done. And the only reason I'm kind of going back over this is just because I want the ink to stay wet. Just adding little bits more and more, keeping the ink wet. Boy, I sure hope MewTwo turns out well after all this. I mean, we haven't even worked on the main character. You're barely even going to notice the background when it's all said and done. I mean, you'll notice it for about 2 seconds, and then you'll be on your way. Okay, so that's good for number 5. Let's go to number 6 now, which is V160. And we're just kind of working our... I'm going to start at the corners, because that's going to be the darkest spot. So whenever I add a new color, I kind of want to start in the darkest area, and then kind of work my way towards the lighter area as I go. This bottom right corner is pretty much done. My squigglies a little bit. Squigglies just help blend it, I think. At least I always seem to get a little bit of a nicer blend when I do little squigglies. You can start with a line, if that's easier, but then kind of come back and do some squigglies. Thin layers of ink at a time. I'm not applying a ton all in one place all at one time. I'm doing it in layers. Right, so you apply a little bit, you let it dry, you come back, work on another area, come back, keep revisiting. So now I'm doing number 5 and just trying to blend this in. Whenever you apply a new marker, you end up with a kind of a borderline like I have right here. So I want to work that borderline out as soon as I can, because while it's easier to do with wetter ink. Once the ink dries, you can't really blend it anymore. So I just want to be aware. I want to apply the dark ink on a wet ink, and then I want to work it again right away with the wet ink. And I might have to do it twice. In fact, I usually recommend doing it twice. Alright, let's go back to that color. Up here. Down here. That corner's good. And then one more time with this purple. It's purple. Purple. And then I might come back in with that color that was running out. RV, so number 4. And I'm going to start in the dark and just kind of drag it towards the light. Okay, because that ink is kind of wet, so I'm actually going to try to pull. I'm going to try to pull some of the ink with me, and it'll lighten up. The more you pull it, it'll lighten up as you go. So it gets lighter as you get further away from the source of the dark color. Using it as a blender now. The other reason I like using thicker paper is it allows me to do more passes. It's a little bit tougher. And these chisel tips, you can literally chisel your way through the paper, which is not good. All right, let's apply number 7 now. I don't even know if I'm going to get to those darker colors. Maybe a touch. This ink is all pretty wet, so small amount of dark color, and we'll try to fade it again, because I realize that this sticks out quite a bit. Yeah, getting these darker markers is less forgiving, so you really want to be working with wet ink. But since we start with the lightest colors, and it's more forgiving, it just kind of works out. Where by the time I'm applying the dark ink, the paper's pretty wet. Alright, coming back in with marker number 6, trying to blur in this edge a little bit. Yeah, that ink is nice and wet for me, so this is actually blurring pretty well, fading pretty well, I should say. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do a second pass. Okay, coming again. Let's do another pass. So I'm adding ink in the darker spots, keeping it wet, and then I can use some of that wet ink and kind of drag it out towards the lighter areas with the lighter marker. Okay, so let's go back to V160. And this time I'm going to just kind of drag some of it out a little bit. Drag it out. When in doubt, you can always use your lightest marker to kind of blur things together. So I'm just going to do a quick pass here, going from the dark area to the light area. I'm just dragging some of that ink out with me. Be wary, sometimes these chisel tips leave streaks. You can actually see the streaks if you look closely. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go with V567. Let's make this real dark. You know what? I think I mixed up the caps, maybe. Wait, which color do I? Oh my gosh, I mixed up the caps. Wait, did I? I mixed up my markers. Oh, you know what? I mislabeled these. Okay. So, this marker here, actually, this label should have gone up here. That's okay. See, I'm working in such a dark area, and I kind of... You're going to make mistakes like that. You're going to grab the wrong marker occasionally. And, so yeah, I think that actually looks pretty good for the perimeter of the background. I think this white will actually look pretty nice. Like I said, I normally don't like to use the white of the paper, but I think in this case it actually looks pretty cool. I'm satisfied with that. Alright, let's put these colors away. Now, MewTwo's skin is a little shiny, it's a little bit reflective, so what I'm going to do is just going to keep out maybe 2 of these markers and see if I can work them in as kind of like a reflection and help do shadows a little bit later. So I'm just going to keep these out. I guess... Oh, his eyes. His eyes look kind of like... I'm just going to use the third marker, RV180. And they're going to be... I normally don't like to color anything with just one color. But since the eye is such a small surface area, I'm just going to use one color because you're really not going to notice it that much. I'm going to keep his eye white for now. I can always come in later and use one of these grays, but I'm just going to keep it white. I think that'll just look a little bit nicer. So I like to start with the easiest areas of the characters. So the background helps, by doing the background first, it kind of gives me establishes some sort of level of contrast, and it's easier to work certain parts of the drawing once other parts are done, because now I can kind of compare the colors together. I'm going to start with the tail, because I think the tail is going to be easier than the skin. And by doing that, it'll give us some comparison. It'll help us compare when we're doing the skin a little bit later. So let's do the tail. Now, I anticipate, so this V20 right here, this first color, is going to be more of a highlight color. When it's all said and done, I think the tail is going to be more of this second color. And I'm going to work my way into the darker areas. Now, I'm going to want my light source to be, even though I know he's kind of glowing, he has light all around him. I'm going to, with the first marker, the lightest color, I always start with the lightest areas. But every marker after that, I start with the darkest areas and work my way back to the light. So let's come here for the tail, and I'm just going to start highlighting just general lighter areas. I'm not going to do the entire tail with this color right now. I'm sure I will eventually, but right now I'm just kind of getting what I think is going to be the brighter areas a little bit light. So my light source is going to be from my upper right, because I'm right-handed, so it's just easier to have the sunlight or the light source from the upper right. Okay. Oh, that looks pretty good. I actually like this color. Alright, now let's go to R11, my second marker, which is going to end up being more of my base color. So I'm going to start in the darker area and work my way towards the light. Just gradually getting it together. Right now I'm in the very early stages, so my goals are to get the ink wet and just kind of establish where the dark spots and the light spots are. Not applying a ton of shading yet. I will, but it's a progression. Okay, you can't just do one area, master it, and then do another area. You kind of got to do them all together a little bit. So I'm gonna come back in. I like this color. I think I chose the colors pretty well. Yeah, choosing the right colors is key. So make sure you spend that time up front to find the right colors. I pick out all my colors for every single part of the entire drawing before I even start. I can just do the entire, like right now, I've got all my markers chosen out. Even if this were a much more complicated drawing, I would still just have my markers out and just kind of ready. So coming back in with that first color. Whenever I say the first color, I always mean the lightest color. And the second color, whenever I say the second color, I mean the second lightest. Blending it all together. And now I'm probably going to do the whole thing with this lightest color, because I just want a little bit of that color mixed in, getting the ink wet. You won't even see this color in the darker areas later. But we're just getting that area wet. Alright, so let's come back in with my second color. So you go light, dark, light, dark. You're kind of just shifting back and forth a little bit. But you know what? I might want a really like a bright highlight. He's kind of shiny. He might be a shiny Pokemon for all we know. But he might be reflecting some of this light a little bit better than I'm showing right now. So what I might do is grab like a bright pink and try to work it into the lighter areas and like really establish like a highlight color. So I'm going to try to find a marker real quick that's not here. So I've got my swatch right here, and I'm going to try to grab something that complements V020, which is right here. I'm going to grab RV030. That's a very bright pink. But it's going to be mixed in, so it's not going to appear super bright. Give me 1 second to find it. Alright, got it. Alright, let's come in and let's just do my lightest areas. So I'm not going to do the entire thing with this color pink. I'm applying a lot of ink in the really light areas. So I'm not covering the entire tail, but I'm really pushing down on these light areas. And because basically what's happening is, since I'm adding a lighter ink into a wet ink that's already darker, I have to apply a lot of it for it to make a difference. If it were a dark ink I were adding, I would only have to add a little bit and you would notice it right away. But with this light pink, not so much. And what we might do a little bit later is come back in with the blender, and that will help these colors kind of stand out even more. Okay, so R11, kind of my base purple. Just when in doubt, keep the ink going. Like right now I'm kind of thinking about what I want to do next, but I'm just making sure that I have wet ink throughout. Always wet ink, always, always, always. Every single pass, it just gets a little bit better. Okay, let's go to my next color, V050. I'm always going to start with what I think is going to be the darkest area, which is going to be right underneath his belly. And I'm working my way up. Do the outside edge a little bit. I'm working my way up. This ink is wet. I'll come back to it later. Go with my darkest area. And we can we're always probably going to do another pass with this marker at some point. And we can always bring that darkness into the lighter areas. So generally as you go, the pictures get darker and darker and darker. Not always, but usually. Which is why I kind of like to just start in the lighter areas and work my way to the darker areas. Darker areas, you always want wet ink. It's just more forgiving. It gives you more room for error. Okay, that's good. So I went to my third marker. I'm going to come back to my second marker and blend this in a little bit. And even though it's just subtle. It's subtle, but every pass we're blurring those colors together just a little bit more, a little bit better. Blending, blending, blending. Let's come in with the lightest marker, so VZ020. And let's work into the lightest areas again. So I'm going over those highlight areas. So the marker I was using a moment ago, that highlight marker, is actually lighter than this one. That's okay. And then now I'm going to come back in with that highlight marker that I chose a little bit earlier. And I'm just keeping, I just always want to, anytime I add to the highlight area, I always want to finish by adding some of the highlight marker with it. And I'll just kind of keep some of this light pink ink right here. And what I can do at the very end is come in with the blender marker, and that will help highlight certain areas as well. Alright, let's go to the darkest color now. So go to my darkest area. Let's see. I've got so much ink down right now. It's so wet that this is just kind of blurring by itself a little bit. So with my darkest color, I generally don't add a very thick line. It's usually pretty thin, but it really establishes a good level of contrast. It really makes a big difference. So you want to make sure you get that right. So very, very thin right here. Since that ink is pretty wet, it's kind of going to just blur into it by itself naturally. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Let's go underneath the tail. Shoot, I went outside the line a little bit, but that's okay. And maybe a touch here on the outside of the tail. Alright, I don't like that line right here, so I'm going to grab V050, my third marker, and try to blend that in a little bit. So again, the darkest color I will ever see will, I'm never going to quite reach that, the level of darkness of the darkest color that I just applied, because I'm blending it in with layer ink that already exists. So I'm never going to quite get that dark when it dries. I'll get close, but not quite that close. My Third marker. Okay, let's come in with marker number 2. There we go. Okay, blending, just always blending. Shoot, I went outside the line there again a little bit. And now I'm going to go to my lightest color. I'll just try to blend this all in. Bring that all together. And then now the highlight color. Now you guys are going to love what I'm about to do. Put down the highlight color. Highlight color. Now I'm going to grab my blender. This is also called an eraser marker, and it's really going to make the light color pop. It's really going to make it a little bit, quite a bit lighter. But you want to be careful. This will leave streaks, so you don't want to glob it all down in one spot. You want to do light passes back and forth. And I can always actually go back into this marker. So like if I go too light, I can grab one of my previous markers and make it darker again. I think that looks pretty good. In fact, you know what? I think it's actually a little bit too light. So I'm going to come in with my first marker and just maybe go over it just a little bit. There we go. Blending, blending, blending. And the belly's pretty good. Alright, that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and put these markers away. Okay, so now I'm going to do the skin. Now his skin is very light, and it's going to be a cross between these purples and these grays here. But I'm going to try to start with the lightest color. This is going to be tough. This is going to be real tough. Because lighter colors are harder to work with than markers. It's less forgiving. I make a mistake. It's hard to correct. Like once you go dark, it's hard to come back. So I'm going to do kind of a combination for my base color. A combination between the lightest gray and that lightest blue. The light lavender color. Guys, I'm nervous about this. I mean, the picture looks really good so far, but just enjoy it while it lasts, because this might not look so good in a little bit. Alright, here goes nothing. I think I'm going to apply ink everywhere and just kind of work the entire thing at once. And he might end up just having slightly more purple skin than he does like in the reference drawings and everything. So, thin layer. Just establish some ink down. Thin layer. Oh boy. And the other thing I don't like is because I have that white background, it's much less forgiving if I make a mistake. Like if I go over the lines, like if I had like a dark blue sky and I went over the line, like who cares? Like not a big deal. You're probably not going to see it very much. But since I got a white background here, any mistake I make is really going to stand out. So I just have to be extra careful. When I'm going around the eye right here, if I put down too much ink, it will start to bleed. So basically what you want to do is like layers, like one thin layer of ink, let it dry a little bit, come back. One thin layer, a second thin layer, let it dry a little bit, come back. And we just kind of keep doing that process, and that will help prevent it from blurring together. If I try to put down all the ink at once, it will blur, it will bleed across the lines. And it'll end up looking really fuzzy and really bad. So thin layer, just to start. This color is pretty good, but it's still a little bit dark, and I'm gonna have trouble going lighter, guys. I mean, this might just be the lightest that I can get. I simply might just not have a color, a marker that can reach the lightness of his skin. I can try though. I will try. Okay, so ink over here is probably pretty dry now. Probably. Gotta add a little bit more. And again, I'm using my chisel tip, and the chisel tips just don't apply as much ink, and they kind of leave streaks a little bit. They're just not the best for applying ink, but for this marker and this color, I only have a chisel tip option. I don't have that brush tip to work with. Oh boy, I'm nervous because I feel like I've done a really good job so far, and you know, I kind of saved the last part, the hardest part for last, which I mean, it's good and bad. It's bad because if I mess up, you know, I could ruin the entire page, and it's easier to mess up there. But it's good because everything else is kind of telling me how it's really going to look when it's all said and done. So by doing the background first, it just kind of gives me a good baseline for comparison of colors and how much contrast I really need and things like that. So just kind of coming back, applying those thin layers. I'll do another pass of the eyeball. I've let it dry enough, I think. Oh, that's pretty good. I'm like nervous, like to add this gray because I've had bad luck with this gray in the past. And I don't even know if I really need the gray. I don't know. It just feels too purple for me right now. Like MewTwo is not quite this purple. He's a lighter color. All right, I'm gonna try adding this light gray into a darker area. So let's go here. You know what? Let's just go for it. Let's see what it looks like. I'll at least get a little bit down. So like, let's say I consider this to be a mistake. Let's say I did this leg, and you know what? Oh, I really hate that. The problem is I've already done the leg, and I kind of gotta commit to my mistake. So right now I actually don't like it all that much. It's okay, but I'm gonna commit to adding this color throughout because I want everything to be the same color when it's all said and done. So I realize I might be making a mistake right now as I speak, but I'm just keeping it consistent. That's why we kind of do the whole thing at once as opposed to just doing certain areas and coming back. It's faster too. It's easier to do the whole thing at once in my opinion. You just gotta be kind of quick. Especially if we're working in large areas where the ink can kind of dry on you. I have a feeling I'm going to be relying on my blender a lot for this. Alright, let's do one more pass with that light blue, with that light purplish color. And now I'm going to make it, I think I'm going to try and make it a little bit more solid now. So this is all just for the base color. Just getting it nice and wet. Not crazy wet, not like saturated wet. But wet enough that I can blend on it. When in doubt, just always add a little bit more ink. When in doubt, adding your lightest ink is always a safe bet. It never really hurts to add light ink. Until your markers run out. Near the eye, gotta be careful near the eye. I don't want to spend too much time around the eye. I don't want the ink to blend, to smear it all. Okay, let's start shading finally. So what I'm going to do is actually grab my highlighter marker and I'm going to start highlighting some areas where I think it's going to be brighter. And we might end up adding a lot here. And I might even, because I can't necessarily go lighter, I might even consider grabbing like a light blue and add, or maybe even, you know, I might even add a little reflection of that pink into what I think are going to be kind of like the shinier areas. I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and highlight some areas here, and we'll come back with the with that pink. Oh, I know this video is really long. I know nobody's probably watching it because I have 0 followers as of right now. And these videos are just going to be super, super long, and nobody wants to watch a video this long. I don't want to watch a video this long. Like, when I edit this, I'm probably just going to fly right through. Oh, I hate this. I don't like this. I'll see what I can do to save it. Oh, it's so dark already. Yeah, so instead of actually having a lighter color to establish my highlight, I might have to just add like a pink, and that will kind of represent my light color. This blender marker is kind of weird. It kind of pushes the ink to the side, and then it kind of dries up kind of funny sometimes. Oh, I really hope I can work this. And I mean, you're gonna have to kind of experiment along the way, but you want to do it with small risks at a time. You don't want to go for the darkest marker right away. You don't want to go for the final result. You just want to work your way up into those lighter colors, or into those darker colors. Start light, end dark. Oh, see, this blender marker is kind of funny. It like makes this ink look kind of splotchy a little bit. It doesn't, it just behaves differently. You're gonna have to play around with it a little bit. And you can see it's being less effective now because I've let the ink has dried on me a little bit. Alright, let's grab a light, just a really light pink. I might grab, let's see, I gotta be fast here. I'm just gonna go RB 130. This is one of the colors I was working with before. If I can find it. RB 130. Okay, so I'm just gonna try this, and let's just add small amounts. Small amounts. It's not gonna stick out too much. We are experimenting on the back part of the leg. So it's kind of representing a reflection of the glow around him. I think that looks actually pretty good. I don't know. I'm doing this tutorial video and like I'm not even 100% sure what I'm doing right now. So, but we're learning together. It's a journey. If I knew exactly what I was doing, it wouldn't be any fun. You kind of gotta experiment on the way, take some chances, and then work with your mistakes. See if you can work your mistakes back into the drawing. Oh, that looks cool. That looks actually pretty shiny now, doesn't it? Alright, let's try going into my second color. So actually, these two markers are the same color. You can see they're just different markers, but I'm gonna go with the one with the brush tip because the brush is just easier to work with. Alright, so let's go to my darker areas. I'm just going to start with what I think is going to be the darkest spots. And we'll come back in and blend a little bit later, as we always do. Okay. Just, I'm always working it. Just always. Oh, you know what? I didn't highlight his leg here, did I? Okay, that's okay. All right, darker color. This is actually a middle marker, but you know it's darker compared to everything else I've put down so far. So this will end up being almost a base color. I mean, it'll be close to the base. Yeah, it depends on how you kind of look at it. Let's see, his side will probably have more shadow. Underneath his pec will definitely have some shadow. Underneath his armpit. So I think this will be a good spot. Like a good dark spot is always underneath the armpit, is usually pretty good. And sometimes these thinner areas are a little bit more difficult because the ink tends to kind of bleed on you a little bit. Oh yeah, that looks good. Let's see, let's do his face. So I've given him a little bit of a glow on this outside of his face, but it's going to get dark real quick, real fast. See if I can come back in and blend that later. His face, alright, let's get up near the eyeball, not too close. Okay, his neck, underneath the neck and the chin is always pretty dark. That looks pretty good. Alright, I'm going to see if I can work that first color back in again. I've pretty much abandoned the grays at this point. I think I'm just going to stick with the blues. But this looks pretty cool, so this is my lightest color. Actually, I'm pretty happy with how this is all kind of turning out. I might even be able to go straight to that darkest color. I'm just going to kind of maybe touch up a few areas. Get a couple places that have dried up, get them a little bit wetter. When in doubt. Yeah. The face looks pretty good. Yeah, I like that face quite a bit. Alright, let's go for the darkest marker now. So we'll start with the darkest areas. So I'm going to say the darkest areas will be like underneath by his hip right here, underneath his leg. And usually with the darkest marker, it's usually a pretty thin amount that you add. But not always. And you know, I'm gonna keep that second marker close nearby. I think I might kind of work them together a little bit here. And you know, I'm gonna keep that first marker out as well. So I think I'm gonna kind of work all three a little bit. And what the heck, let's actually add that pink again. I'm just going to keep all the markers out, but focusing on the darkest one. So we'll come to the darkest area of his foot here, at least what I think is going to be the darkest area. Oh, shoot. And he might have like a very thin shadow that kind of comes up. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. Alright, let's work that in, because I need to blend this a little bit. Shoot. Alright. I just gotta commit to the darkest color. Let's go underneath the armpit. It's a good dark spot. I'm just gonna make his whole side pretty dark, I think. Kind of follow up this line. Up the sides. Let's see, his pec will probably get it. So I'd like to work the areas I know are gonna be dark. It's always safe to add ink to a spot that I know is gonna end up being like the darkest anyway. Underneath the neck, and then maybe kind of work this in a little bit. Side of his face, maybe underneath his nose a little bit, his cheek, maybe a tiny bit underneath his eye, above his eye. And maybe this finger here a little bit, this finger. This darkness really makes the brights pop. So it's very important. Alright, let's go with that second marker and just try to blend this a little bit better. It might be a little too light right there, so I'll come in with that lighter marker, the lightest marker. Not my highlight marker. When I say my lightest marker, I mean my lightest base color. Now I'm going to do the highlight marker right here. In fact, that looks pretty good. Alright, where's my darkest marker? It's my second darkest right here. The middle marker, I should say. And I'm just blurring in that line a little bit. Gosh, I even almost might want to go even a little bit darker than what I currently have. Let's do the hand. Oh, let's do this neck thing too. I kind of wish I had like one real dark color. Since I couldn't capture the lights because the markers don't go that light, sometimes it just helps to make everything a little bit darker, so it makes the lightest colors appear a little bit lighter. I don't know. I don't even know what color I would choose at this point. Okay. This is turning out pretty well. Let's go over my highlight area one more time. My base blue. And you can see the ink dries, it gets lighter. It's lighter as you go. I don't know, this is pretty good. Let me come in with the, oops. Let me come in with the highlighter one more time, and let's go over a couple more highlight areas. Just briefly. His face here. Maybe make it a touch brighter. So it highlights, but it lightens, and it also blends. Now some of these areas, I know I'm kind of jumping around back and forth, but some of these areas are drier than others. And that makes a difference in how this marker works with everything. Oh, I kind of screwed up the back of the neck there. Let's go in with this pink. And then let's get that base blue. So I think that, I don't think there's much else I can do in this drawing. I think that's about as good as I can do right now. So I think I'm going to call that good. I hope you enjoyed it if you made it this far. I know the video was pretty long, but maybe you just skipped forward and found some areas that you liked. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments section below. If you have any suggestions or questions, comments, concerns, whatever, I will read it. I know it's the new YouTube channel, so got a lot of work to do if I'm ever going to gain any traction. But yeah, your early support would really help, and I hope that this helps you too. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.